Hello everyone, this is part 26 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Uzumaki Naruto was not having a good day, then again considering the past few days it was not a surprise. First Ichiraku had been closed for renovations, and then he had discovered his serious depletion of weapons and other items a ninja needed. Then, because she couldn't K him, Anko had apparently decided to tea him. She had done something unforgivable. Mitarashi Anko had burned nearly all of his jumpsuits, leaving Naruto with only his Chunin vest, the various shirts he had scrounged over the years and the tattered jacket he was currently wearing. Correction, the tattered jacket he was patching while his teammates trained. Naruto sat under a tree, sewing patches of orange into the tattered fabric, squinting as he worked. The orange he was using wasn't even the right color, but it didn't matter. As long as he could keep the jacket just a bit longer, then Naruto was happy. Ino still didn't understand his attachment to orange, nobody seemed to really, other than Rock Lee. The two had only hung out together once, and even then, it had been to beat the crap out of each other. Lee had managed to come out on top in that exchange, but that was okay since it had just been taijutsu. Still, Lee at least understood the importance of orange to Naruto, much as Naruto now understood the importance of green spandex to Lee. For Lee, the spandex was a sign of his dedication of becoming a great ninja solely by using taijutsu. For Naruto, the orange was important because it made him stand out. It forced people to acknowledge his presence, because when Naruto had been growing up in the orphanage, the children had been expected to just blend into the background. People didn't want to notice children that nobody wanted or cared about. They had to dress the same, have the same hair, and most importantly stay silent. Naruto had been unable to stay silent, and they had gone to great lengths to try to force it, though all attempts failed. When he had been offered entrance to the Ninja Academy, by a smiling Mizuki no less, he had been forced to leave the orphanage. Naruto had set up shop in a nearly condemned apartment building, and for the first time he was allowed to pick his own clothes. It was by pure luck that he discovered the disgruntled shop owner ready to destroy his entire stockpile of orange jumpsuits. Naruto had begged and pleaded, then happily took the free clothes. After that, nobody ignored him. He refused to change. Even in the face of Shinobi Rule 20, a shinobi must walk and hide within the shadows of deceit. He must not seek attention, nor should he desire anything other than remaining hidden. To Uzumaki Naruto, orange was a divine color, the perfect color, no matter what anybody else thought. Naruto-kun, why don't you just buy a new jacket? Ino asked suddenly, and Naruto looked up to find the two other ninja breaking for lunch. Anko of course was busy trying to run damage control since Naruto had retaliated for burning his clothes, so it was just the three of them for the day. Why? Naruto asked, clueless, knowing of course that while Ino was nicer to him, she hadn't grown up like he had. Well, that jacket is ruined, so just buy a new one, Ino explained, sitting down across from him. I mean, you're doing really good at sewing. I can't even do that good a job, but still. But Ino-chan, it's perfectly fine. Naruto protested, holding it up proudly. Besides, it's orange, there aren't any other orange jackets in this whole village. Yes, and Naruto, don't you remember Shinobi Rule 20? Ino countered determinedly, a shinobi must walk and hide within the shadows of deceit, he must not seek attention, nor should he desire anything other than remaining hidden. Orange is hardly subtle. It's a stupid rule, Naruto said, smiling at her before turning back to his work on patching his jacket. Besides, buying a new jacket when I have a perfectly good one is a waste of money. Oh, Ino said with a note of sudden understanding, and when he looked up he found her looking slightly embarrassed. Oi, what is it? Well, it's just. Ino paused, then her voice dropped, you grew up without money. Naruto-kun, it's okay to buy stuff you want. You've ran a few high-rank missions, you should have a lot of money. You can afford new clothes. Naruto stared at her for a moment, unsure whether to feel hurt, angry or touched. Apparently, she saw what he was feeling, because she suddenly looked awkward and opened her mouth to say something when he beat her to the punch. Oi. Ino-chan, it's not that I can't, or think I can't, afford stuff. I love orange, like you love purple, to me it's the perfect color. If I have a perfectly good orange jacket, I see no reason to buy something I hate. But, Ino stammered with wide eyes, why do you like orange? You know, as riveting as this discussion is, a new voice interjected and the two ninja looked around to find Kiba and Akamaru standing on the edge of the clearing. The Hokage wants to see you three. Kiba, Ino asked, blinking. Oi, what's that masked pervert want? Naruto asked, not moving from where he was sitting. The dog boy blinked, before Sakura, Sasuke, and Kurenai arrived. Hey, he sent your whole team just to find us. What are you guys just messengers now? No, Kurenai said, eyeing him darkly, I requested this as a training exercise in tracking. Whatever, Naruto said, springing to his feet and throwing his jacket on before picking up his nearly empty weapons pouch. Kurenai-sensei, did the Hokage happen to mention why he wished to see us? Shino asked, walking over to join his team. Oi, probably wants to give us an A-rank mission. Naruto said brightly, overriding the now openly irritated Kurenai. More likely he wants you three to clean up the S in the Inuzuka kennel, Kiba said with a smirk, while we're doing the high-rank mission. No, I'm pretty sure that's what your sister does, Ino shot back. No, she doesn't, Kiba retorted angrily, his smirk fading. Oh, then why else would she spend her time in a dog kennel on her hands and knees? Ino asked with mock innocence. Naruto blinked as her innuendo crashed through his brain, and turned to stare at a smugly grinning Ino, then turned back to the other team. The look of shock on Kiba's face was priceless, the sheer horror on Kurenai's was beautiful, Sakura's blush was interesting and Sasuke's wide-eyed surprise was perfect. He turned back to Ino and said the only thing he could think of. Sweet Kami, you're perfect. Took you this long to figure that out. Ino said lightly, smiling at him. If you two are done flirting, Shino said, walking between them and past the frozen team, the Hokage would like to see us. We weren't flirting. Naruto and Ino shouted in unison and then hurried after him. Tsunade-sama, I still don't see why I or Kiyoshi-san can't be allowed to go, Shizune said, handing the buxom blonde a pack of scrolls. Tsunade paused, a frown marring her features as she fixed her apprentice with a glare. Honestly, Shizune should have known by now not to argue with her over something like this. Then again, Shizune would be afraid of Tsunade trying to escape. As if Tsunade had accepted the position as head of the healthcare system in Konoha, she would not just abandon things after that. Kiyoshi has to stay here to make sure the hospital runs properly, Tsunade finally said, turning back to her packing. You need to stay here to start making the changes I want, you're better at that sort of thing than me. Also, for some of the people I'll be dealing with you're less than fully equipped. Tsunade-sama, Shizune squeaked, arms covering her modest C that was hidden away by the formless black kimono she always wore. Just being honest, Tsunade said, turning to grin at her apprentice, now then, just make sure things run smoothly and if they don't feel free to ask Kakashi to K someone. He's gotta be good for something after all. Tsunade-sama, you shouldn't speak that way about the Hokage. Shizune chided, wagging a finger slightly. Hokage, I'm sorry, but I look at him and I still see Sakumo's snot-nosed, whiny runt running around N. Tsunade said, laughing at the memory of trying to drink tea while this little kid ran around N in the house. Sakumo had been so embarrassed, but the Sannin had assured him it was a relief to see a semi-normal kid, though Orochimaru had made a comment later about genetics. Chuckling, Tsunade picked up her furoshiki and the suitcase of money. At her request they had paid her for a year in advance. Tsunade had figured if she would be making this trip she should try to pay off her more outstanding debts. Shizune had been thrilled at her decision, until discovering that Tsunade would be leaving without her. Tsunade-sama, please let me come along, Shizune tried one more time before the Sannin stopped and turned, glaring at her. I'm over 50 years old, Shizune Kuhai, I think I can pay off my own debts while I get what we need for Konoha without getting into trouble. Tsunade snapped, then seeing Shizune quail, smirked, now you have fun and keep in mind that Hatake genetics are very generous. Then with that, she left the small apartment, the door closing behind her with a thunk. Whistling in amusement, the legendary strolled down the hallway, ignoring the looks of awe she received, and then out to the street. Oh, to be free, Tsunade's soul sang, at least 2 weeks without Shizune nagging at her constantly. Though she would never admit that to the young woman's face, after all Shizune was Tsunde's favorite student. Plus the girl had been there for her through some hard times, so they were friends. It was just that Shizune could be at times. Part of Tsunde actually hoped that the girl ended up spending a night with the Hokage, maybe getting laid would loosen her up. Passing the village park, Tsunde paused long enough to spot the various children at play, then hurried along, her heart aching as she remembered playing with Nawaki there. A few moments later she passed the academy, quickening her pace, wishing to not remember any of the memories she associated with that place, and 3 blocks later entered the Hokage Tower. The office workers of course froze upon seeing her. She was a legendary figure after all, but still parted before her. It seemed to take no time to climb the stairs and enter the Hokage's office. The office itself was unchanged, and she almost expected to find Sarutobi sitting at the desk, puffing on his pipe. The air should have been thick with the comforting scent of cherry or whatever flavored tobacco he had been using at the time. Instead, it was filled with the scent of air freshener, and the Hokage who sat behind the desk was only in his mid-20s. "Hey Kakashi, you got my team yet?" Tsunde asked, approaching the desk, staring at the masked man who didn't even bother to look up from his book. "They should be downstairs. I've sent Kotetsu to bring them up," Kakashi said, causally turning the page of his book. "I hope you don't mind, but I found a team that can anticipate your every move." "I don't need babysitters," Tsunde grated out darkly. "Oh no," Kakashi said, finally looking up and his eye closed happily. "They're not your babysitters, just the ones best suited to drive you crazy." Tsunde managed, blinking, before the door to the office opened and a loud voice boomed into the silence. "Oi, we're here, masked Pev, what'cha want?" Turning, Tsunde found Uzumaki Naruto, Yamanaka Ino and what was obviously an Aburame standing in the office doorway. Naruto spotted her a second later and eyes widening pointed, "Hey, it's, he stopped however, and scowled, crossing his arm going into deep thought. "I am amazed he has yet to find a nickname for you," the Aburame said stoically as ever. "Oi, I know," Naruto suddenly boomed pointing at Tsunde, "it's the Kupioni." "What did you say?" Ino asked slowly, a tad too sweetly, turning to glare at the boy. "I said, it's the Kupioni," Naruto answered, scowling in thought. "Never say that," Ino shrieked, grabbing the front of his jacket and shaking him like a rag doll. Okay, Naruto squeaked, and when she released him, huffed, "She's Kupaibaba." "Naruto," Ino screeched. Tsunde blinked, half amused and half offended. It was something that her brother might have shouted. Then again, it was also something Jiraiya might have said while leering. It was then that Tsunde realized just how painful having him on this mission would be. He reminded her too strongly of so many people that she had lost or known. "I'm happy to see that you've kept your sense of humor, Naruto," Kakashi interjected over the squabble. "I'm sure you'll need it when Anko gets done with smoothing out the chaos you created for her this morning." "Hey, it was her fault," Naruto said defensively, though his eyes belayed the worry he felt. "What exactly did you do?" Tsunde found herself asking, fascinated with the boy and what he could have done to piss off Anko even more. "Well, she burned my jumpsuits," Naruto explained with a frown before grinning slightly. "So I used the no jutsu variation to appear like her. It lets me mimic a person right down to their chakra and it doesn't fade until I let it." "And you pretended to be her," Tsunde summarized, impressed with the jutsu he had just described. "It was like the henge, only 20 times more potent." "Yep. Anko, who ran through the streets hugging random people, claiming to love them," Naruto said laughing. "The best was when, haha, Kurenai got hugged and I, made Anko her on the mouth." "You did? What?" Kakashi asked, startled and sounding far more interested than would be expected for a Hokage response. "Yeah, so Anko spent the whole morning trying to convince everyone it wasn't her." Naruto gloated, hands behind his head. "So that is why Kurenai-san was glaring at you," Shino said before shaking his head. "Naruto, if you were a few years older," Tsunde said, staring at him in amazement, "I would you." For what?" Naruto asked, clueless about the glare Ino was sending Tsunde. "Because I've always wanted to see Anko in a panic and any guy that can do it deserves AK." Tsunde answered, ignoring the glare. which she found more amusing than intimidating. Seeing his surprise and tiny smile, Tsunade turned back to the Hokage and cleared her tea. So are you going to brief them or keep picturing those 2K? Right, Kakashi managed, keeping his voice level as he addressed the team. I'm assigning you a B rank mission, not out of difficulty, but because it is of utmost importance. You see, this is a mission to help bolster our village health care. Tsunade-sama requires an escort and I selected your team, since you're comprised of 2 talented Chunin and 1 highly talented Genin as the best for this mission. Wait, so all we get to do is just walk around with? Naruto paused and seeing the look on Ino's face changed whatever he was going to say, that lady. There was a moment of silence, as all of them, including Tsunade, were taken back by his choice of words. From what Tsunade had gathered, it was a lot nicer than what he would normally use. Maybe her great-niece had some promise after all. Essentially yes, Kakashi said nodding slightly. Tsunade-sama will be carrying a large amount of money to help settle old business she has, so you'll be guarding it mostly. As a Sannin, Tsunade-sama personally doesn't need a team to watch out for her, though after the debt is paid you'll still act as honor guard. Well that's okay then, Naruto said with a grin, we can leak word about the money and fight the bandits. That'll keep us entertained while we work. You know, Tsunade muttered to Kakashi, he reminds me an awful lot of Anko. I know. Deifu-sama. Yes. Deifu said softly, his pen paused and just barely looking up from his paperwork at the man in the doorway. Abaku-san is here, the man said motioning with his head slightly, he has information that he says you should hear. From Konoha. Ah, send him in. Deifu offered, sitting back in his seat as the door closed. A moment later, it reopened and Abaku entered, dressed neatly as always. The man bowed respectfully as the door closed once more. Abaku-san, it is so nice to see you again. Deifu-sama, it is an honor to see you once more. So, you have information from Konoha. What kind of news could be so important as to drag a man away from his family on such an important day? Our source within the hidden village whispered to me 3 things, Abaku said, glancing at the only other man present, Aichi, who had been quietly examining his own set of papers. One is that the Hyuga have taken something of great value to the Uchiha and hidden it, another that the Yondaime Hokage has a son, and last, Deifu said, eyes almost glowing in interest. The information so far had been very interesting and potentially very valuable. Last and most importantly, that the legendary sucker Tsunade is traveling through the area. Tsunade, is she looking to increase her debt? Deifu asked with a soft chuckle. No, Abaku said, she is traveling to gather supplies to increase Konoha's health care, first here to Ejoto and then to Crater City. She is also carrying a great deal of money to pay off her debts in Otofuku-gai. So then, she has money but does not think to pay us. Deifu said sadly, sitting back in his leather chair, we, who fronted her a great deal of money. We, who bought out many of her former debts from the other Yakuza families. Wasn't it us that kept her dear friend Shizune from having to work in a brothel to pay off such a debt that even a minor shinobi village would go bankrupt? Yes, Deifu-sama, Abaku agreed, equally saddened. She has apparently forgotten us, her best and dearest of friends. Obviously, Deifu murmured, standing slowly and moving to stare out the blinds of his window, watching the bustling village below him. It was time to collect, at least partially, upon the debt she owed them. Tsunade needed to learn, Sannin or not, nobody cheated the Yakuza. Turning, he swept the dark room, with its patterned shadows, and then settled his iron gaze upon Aichi, who was his most trusted lieutenant. Aichi-san, I wish for you to contact Isaribi-san. I would ask of him to please retrieve the money for us. Of course, Daifu-sama, Aichi said, climbing to his feet and bowing politely, leaving in the company of Abaku. Oh, my dear Tsunade-chan, Daifu intoned softly, turning back to the window alone once more, I weep for the steep price you will pay. Within Konoha, there are places, dark and forgotten places, deep under the ground of the village and even the Anbu integration cells. These places were created for various functions, escapes, food storage against siege, forbidden weapons, and at least one had been where a traitorous Sannin had performed his more ghastly research. Within these places of darkness was an average-sized, utterly unremarkable room, bathed almost completely in darkness. 3 men currently resided within this room, unfazed by the darkness that filled it. 2 of these men stood professionally before the third, who was seated against the wall, between two bookcases and behind a desk covered haphazardly with folders and papers. The only noise in this utterly unremarkable room was the sound of subtle breathing and the scratching of a pen on parchment. Sir, we have confirmation that the messages were delivered to Deifu. The man on the left said, his voice that of one from the grave, filtered though it was through the mask he wore. Good, the man behind the desk said, his attention shifting to the two that stood before him, then Hiru can proceed with his mission. Hi, the man on the right said, standing even more rigid, what is the final decision? Make contact, the man behind the desk said, turning his attention completely to Hiru, after the elegant monster of the mist withdraws, offer him the deal we made to Zed-san. Tell him that if he would help us in our great cause for unity, that we will in return, repay his kindness in whatever manner he wishes. Hi, and if he accepts, then you are of course, to ask humbly that he removes Deifu from control of that family. If he inquires as to why we wish for this, you are to explain that we have other agents working toward an understanding with the esteemed Tsunade. The removal of Deifu, along with the solemn agreement with A-san to forget her debts when he assumes control, will greatly help us. Hi, Hiru said, then bowing turned and disappeared into the darkness, disappearing completely. Sir, shall I contact Zed-san now? The other man said, bringing the man behind the desk's attention back to him. Before that, D-sama has orders that he can only give you, his most loyal of subordinates. Whatever D-sama asks of me, I shall perform, the man responded, kneeling respectfully before the desk. Very well, the man behind the desk said, D-sama would like for you to contact the remaining brother, who is to deliver this message to O-san who resides in the field. We are endeavoring to help you as you have requested at the meeting within the boundaries of death. We have located two, one under heavy watch by both us and your agent. Another is hidden away by the clan of the Sun, we are endeavoring to locate. Upon discovery we will await your decision and hope that the agreement between our two parties can be achieved prosperously as we both wish. Hi. Second, D-sama requires that you ensure to send a message to H. Dono saying, all things are proceeding as agreed, the CV of both H and K have accepted that any action beyond the wall should not involve the country. The reign and those whom you decide may be dealt with as it has been decreed. Hi. Finally, D-sama requests that you apply the first L seal to T-san, to ensure that N-kun is on the correct path. Hi. The kneeling man said sharply, standing once more, what of Zed-san, is there any particular method or way of approach preferred for this objective? Yes, the man behind the desk said, first tell Zed-san that this shall be the last task we require as payment for the agreement struck. When D-sama brings us unity, Zed-san shall have the support needed to achieve his goal. Second, inform him that we request that he should send H-kun to deliver this message to Tsunade exactly as it is said, within Konoha, we lack unity. We seek your aid in helping us to achieve this goal, as a sign of faith we have removed those who would dishonor you by demanding money and wounding your comrades. If you decide to help us in our cause then we shall help you as it is needed, if you decline then we lose a vaunted ally. Hi. And if she does decline? Then Zed-san and H-kun are to silence them, the man behind the desk said firmly, their deaths can be linked to Deifu easily and we will soon have his body at our disposal. We cannot risk their survival, as it could potentially create connections that we do not wish. Hi. I understand it will all be done as both D-sama and unity requires, the man said before he too, disappeared into the darkness. It had been a while since Tsunade had moved toward a target with such determination. For the last dozen or so years the Sannin had meandered across the continent, Shizune in tow. No set destination in mind, going only where her whims or fate carried her, doing her best to forget about her past and that at one time her hands had been covered with B. Yes, it had been many years since she had traveled with determination, toward a specific goal. It had also been many years since she had been without Shizune, who had been a constant companion for Tsunade. A sort of relief from the solitude when it became too much, a trusted friend and comrade, who was a hell of a lot quieter than her current companions. Shino wasn't so bad, Tsunade knew his father since he had at one time tried to ask her out. The boy was quiet, kept to himself and focused entirely on his bugs. Most surprising was the fact that despite his teammates, he seemed perfectly balanced. No, Tsunade had no problem with Shino, rather it was with Ino and Naruto who were less than quiet. The two blondes alternated between bickering and chatting about everything under the sun. which might have been amusing, except for the fact that they never shut up and talked in tones that set her teeth on edge. Naruto-kun, about your no jutsu variation, Ino suddenly said, her voice inquisitive, can you really become anybody with it? Well yeah, Naruto said with a nod, hands behind his head, well, I gotta at least see them first. Hang out for a bit if I really want to copy them perfectly. Ino said, silent for a moment, so have you used it to ever become me? Well, not yet, Naruto offered, his tone teasing, but when I get around to it I'll see about your lack of. Ino naturally screeched at this, her Kodaki S through the space he had been occupying. Naruto of course dodged and a minute later led Ino on a merry little chase, before ultimately being beaten to the edge of unconsciousness. Tsunade, who had watched the whole thing, shook her head. Kami, don't they ever stop? You get used to it, Shino offered from beside her. That was not, however, the last argument since Naruto had recovered amazingly fast and launched into a spiel about how abusive Ino was. After another 3 hours of the two arguing, Tsunade called an early lunch and threatened to sever their vocal cords if they spoke. Naruto had protested naturally, and Tsunade causally reached over, numbing them. As Naruto freaked out in amusing pantomime, the others laughed and started preparing their meals. It wasn't until near the end of lunch that Naruto's voice started to return, signaling the start of another 6 hours of tea. Sighing, the legendary medic closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the tree, musing about her life and how smart she had been to ensure there was a team to keep the money safe. Tsunade could already feel the urge to take the money and visit a gambling hall, but with it safely in the hands of Team 10, well, she could still take it, but it would be marginally harder. Ino, her niece, which was a concept she was still trying to grasp, was not a pushover. Nor was Shino, from what she gathered, and with Naruto, who had held of Orochimaru for a few minutes and defeated a Jinchuriki without help, it was more trouble than it was really worth. A Basan? Ino asked, and Tsunade jerked slightly at the address. Yeah, Tsunade replied, forcing herself to banish the strangeness of being called that. It was weird to be around family, even a branch of the family she had never really known about. It was even weirder to have a member of that branch address you so humbly or with such familiarity. Well, I was wondering where exactly we're going, Ino said, looking interested. Kakashi-kun forgot to tell you that, Tsunade said, smirking at the mild shock on the girl's face at the casual way she had referred to the Hokage. We're heading to Edyoto, that's in the second region. Second region? Naruto interjected, suddenly looking up from his ramen. Did you sleep your way through the academy? Tsunade asked archly, then seeing his nod and grin, sighed. No Kuni is divided into 14 regions by size, each controlled by a governor. There's the central region, controlled by the daimyo and the Hokage. Then there's first region and then the second region, which is where Edyoto is, and so on. I see, Naruto said brightly. Tsunade kept the wince or the flash of pain hidden, but right then she had seen a flash of her brother. Nawaki had reacted the exact same way when she had explained the regions to him so many years ago. So we're going to Edyoto to see Governor Uo. He owes me a few favors from the Second Shinobi War and I intend to collect, since he has some of the best medical connections in other villages along with a great wealth of medicinal herbs. Wait, so why don't we already have access to them? Ino asked, looking confused. Because until now, Konoha never had someone in control of the health care system that would bother with increasing the options, Tsunade explained with a snort. Konoha, like all ninja villages, places a lot more effort into combat and reactive medicine. I'm going to start putting effort into proactive medicine, that way we'll be prepared for nearly anything. So after we go to Edyoto, where do we go? Naruto asked, stretching as he stood. Back to Central Region, first to Otofukugai so I can deal with my personal business. Then we'll head on to Crater City. They have a surplus of civilian doctors and materials that we can use even if they are normally sneered at by shinobi, Tsunade explained with a frown, but sometimes they're more useful than shinobi methods. Even medical jutsu can do so much, so the more options the better. Osu, Edyoto, here we come. Naruto shouted and Tsunade felt a migraine beginning to form. Yamanaka Ino was feeling good, her arm finally free of the cast thanks to both Sakura and her great-aunt. She was on a decent mission and she was getting to know her great-aunt even better. Most importantly, she was entering the famous city of Edyoto, home of some of the most famous flowers in the country. Like the uke no namida, a flower that tradition said originally sprang from the bee of a heroic daimyo's tears, primarily it was used for funerals of very important people. Edyoto, Tsunade said blandly as they rounded the bend and came to a stop on a slight rise overlooking the city. Edyoto was a sprawling city, arranged around an impressive castle directly in the center. The area immediately around the castle is made up of mansions for high-ranking samurai and court nobles. Just beyond those are several temples and beyond that a massive market area. It's bigger than Konoha, Ino admitted, eyes wide, a lot bigger. Of course, it used to be the seat of power for Hai no Kuni, Tsunade said setting off, leading the three toward the massive city. The urban sprawl has gotten better over the years, more pleasant homes and rustic shops. That river is a nice place, it's got a few nice restaurants and even a nice place to walk alongside and think. Tsunade Abasan, Ino said glancing around, impressed by the sheer number of people around them, but spotting the massive gate towering over the area to the left. What's that gate for? Oh, that, the Sannin said dismissively with a vague wave of her hand, it just marks the center of the city's commercial center. Many fishermen, craftsmen, and retailers operate there, along with large shipping companies. Edyoto might not be the seat of Hai no Kuni's political power, but it's still the center of the economy. Tsunade-sama, Shino asked softly, making the Sannin jerk slightly, having apparently forgotten he was there. I have noticed ninja marking our progress. They do not seem overly hostile, but they do not seem to hail from Konoha. The Sannin said, then glanced and snorted, oh, them. I think they're called Hai no Kuni ninja, basically state-controlled ninja. But I thought Konoha was the source of ninja for Hai no Kuni, Ino said thoughtfully glancing at her aunt. They were, if I don't all the details, but a governor has been trying to form them into his own private army. But where would he get such people? Shino asked, his interest apparently piqued, and surprisingly it was Naruto that answered the question. The smaller ninja academies throughout Hai no Kuni, failed Konoha Academy students and former samurai, the blonde paused, scowling off to the side. They do lack even the basic stealth skills of academy students, Shino allowed, with what seemed to be disdain in his tone. Ino, however, was more interested in how Naruto had figured out the source without stopping to give it serious thought. Not as dumb as you look, eh? Or you listen to Anko when she talks. Tsunade said offhandedly to Naruto, before bringing them to a halt before a massive statue outside the streets where the mansions resided. Okay, you three go do whatever. I need to see you alone and we'll meet up later. That is not standard procedure, Shino said, an eyebrow rising up. Maybe not, Tsunade returned, glancing at him, but 1, I'm a Sannin, 2, Yuo is an old friend who also happens to distrust most ninja, and 3, your mission is to guard the money, not me. Still, it would be better if you took one of us with you, Shino said firmly, his tone letting Ino know that he was not about to drop this. Ino, however, saw the slight tick in her aunt's eye that hinted at annoyance. She'd seen the older woman react the same way after a few of Naruto's nicknames. Hence, Ino knew exactly how violent things could become, so she did the most obvious thing. Shoving the briefcase into Naruto's hands, she covered Shino's mouth with her hand. Of course, Abasan. Please forgive him, he was just trying to do the right thing. Tsunade offered a fleeting smirk, then turning left them standing there. Releasing Shino, Ino took a step back as a soft buzzing noise filled the air and Shino turned toward her. Sorry, but remember what she did to Naruto. Oi, she just caught me by surprise. Naruto protested loudly. Ino rolled her eyes, and when she saw Shino nod she breathed a bit easier. The boy was a tad touchy lately, a marked contrast to how he had been when they were first put on the team. Then again, Shino could have been affected by Naruto's personality. Then seeing the way Naruto and Shino got along, she mused, it could have been they had all influenced each other. Shaking it off she smiled brightly, so, should we go get some lunch? Lunch? Naruto asked happily, bright eyes darting around the city, obviously looking for a ramen stand. It sounds like a good idea, Shino said with a slight nod, however, I would prefer it not be ramen. Don't worry, it won't be, Ino assured him, ignoring Naruto's vocal protests, as she turned to lead the way through the streets. So what kind of restaurants you think they have around here? Undoubtable good ones, Shino said, ignoring Naruto's grumbles as well. Ooh, there's a wasabi restaurant. Ino said, eyes darting along the shops. Yakitori would be more preferable, Shino responded. Wasabi can have undesirable effects on my kikai. Ah, well, Ino said before being interrupted by the loud blonde from behind them. Oi, don't I get a say in where we eat? Turning, Ino eyed the irate blonde, then glanced at Shino, then glanced at Naruto. A moment passed and then she turned back to Shino, continuing as if she hadn't been interrupted. Yakitori sounds okay, but it's always been a tad strong for my taste. Things continued in this vein for a long while, much to Naruto's continued annoyance, though by the time they finally reached the restaurants along the river he was grinding his teeth. Ino of course knew he had been keeping his temper, why she wasn't sure, but he would snap soon. Shino came to the rescue by suggesting that they should eat in a modest restaurant that seemed to specialize in teriyaki and nabe. Naruto grumbling agreed and the three were seated at a table, the waitress bowing and smiling brightly before leaving them alone. It still amazed Ino, however, that somehow despite their efforts, Naruto still managed to order ramen. Ino was beginning to recognize that it was impossible to keep Naruto and ramen apart. Propping her chin in her hand, the Kenjutsu user huffed in annoyance, much to Naruto's obvious amusement. If I may ask, Shino said after a moment, managing to sit stiffly at the table, have either of you thought about why we were assigned the mission? Cause were the best. Naruto responded, blinking as he stared at the boy. Excuse me, I misspoke, Shino said inclining his head, I meant why was this mission assigned? So someone could guard the money while that, Naruto paused, glancing cautiously at Ino, woman does her talk and crap. That is true, on the surface, Shino offered, however, consider our team. Each of us is among the most talented of our generation, this mission is a waste of our talent. Any genin team could handle such a mission as to guard money from bandits. Yeah, Naruto said in agreement, sudden understanding flooding his face. Plus, Tsunade-Basan is a Sannin, so who could actually rob her? Ino asked, frowning as she to realize the oddness of this mission. Maybe, Shino offered as the food was delivered and the waitress left once more, we are not here to merely guard the money from bandits. Well, then who are we guarding the money from? Naruto asked with a touch of annoyance. It's not like she'd try and steal it. Quote. I was kidding, Naruto said quickly, staring back and forth between them. I mean, okay, she's a lot of things, but why would she steal her own money? Well, I know that some of my family have serious gambling problems, Ino offered seriously, she could be a chronic gambler. But it's her money. Naruto countered. That is destined to take care of, Shino said calmly, Tsunade-sama's old business. It could be that the money is to be put toward gambling debts, however, as a chronic gambler she could be tempted into using it to gamble with. Holy hell, Naruto said throwing his hands up, the briefcase dangling in one hand, all those Sannins are F up. There's Ero Sennin who's just a big perv, then there's that snake bastard who tea people for fun and then there's Baba who gambles all her money away. Quote. Baba? Ino asked mildly startled, wondering at Naruto's new choice of nickname. Well, she is over 50, Naruto offered with a snort crossing his arms. I can live with that, Ino responded grudgingly before she turned her full attention to her food. As Tsunade passed through the stone gate set into the massive walls of interlocking battlements, she felt a flash of melancholy settle over her. The last time she had been to this Shiro, the Sandaime had been alive, she had just turned Chunin and Governor Yuo had just achieved power. Shaking the memories off, Tsunade noted the samurai, wearing red and black uniform kimonos bearing the circular flame insignias of Hai no Kuni. They moved with smart, military professionalism, their alertness doubling at her presence. Still, nobody moved to question or bar her yet, that would come later and only because her arrival had been announced by those Hai no Kuni ninja. Yuo always had been a bit more lax with his own personal safety than the safety of his people. Following the road she was on as it curved to the left, she smiled briefly as she traveled a vast avenue lined with heavily fortified houses behind easily defendable greater walls and lesser walls, then doubled on itself into a labyrinth of steps and roads. So maybe Yuo wasn't as lax as he had been in the past, these would be a serious deterrent to most threats. The Sannin paused just beyond them to stare out at the carefully tended, multicolored garden on the left before remembering Jiraiya telling her the story of when this castle had belonged to the first Hai no Kuni daimyo. How he had been a very paranoid man and built the castle to be a deliberate maze, but that he had built it too well and gotten lost in it, only to rest in the garden and now roamed the grounds as a ghost. Shivering from that memory, she turned away and continued to the final gate, which stood open though heavily guarded, allowing her to enter the inner courtyard, which was guarded by several more samurai. Pausing, she grinned, seeing the far door open, and set off at a brisk pace where she was bowed through the door to enter the fort. The corridor inside was richly carpeted with rush mats, clean and kind to the feet. Without stopping, Sunad climbed the winding, defendable stairs while passing through several additional corridors and stairs. Finally, she came to the last corridor, and after a sharp corner, the Sanin found a group of masked samurai with a young officer in front. Behind them was another door, outlined with iron for reinforcement, and Sunad stopped short as she heard the whisper of a blade sliding partially out of a scabbard. Okay, which of you bastards wants his arm broke? Sunad asked casually, eyeing the masked group. When nobody moved, she sighed and glared at the samurai in charge. You better move or I'm going to start spanking you like the babies you are. We have orders. Kanto-san, I would let Sunad-sama through if I were you, an amused voice said. See the samurai off. A moment later, a grey-haired and grizzled samurai appeared from an unseen alcove. I have seen her when the mood is on her, and she is not one to play nicely with teething children. Akechi-sama, Kanto said, bowing, while looking rather upset. Our orders. I know your orders, I gave them to you, Akechi said blandly, turning to smile at Sunad. Governor Yuo has been expecting you. Please go in. Thanks, RK-chan, Sunad beamed, knowing that she was probably one of the few people that could get away with such informality. The young officer seemed to realize the situation and curtly motioned his men aside, allowing him to open the thick door himself. Giving the young man a narrow look, she walked past them, shoulders squared and chin high, every bit the legendary ninja that she was. The audience room was immense, 40 paces square and 10 feet high, the tatami mats of the best quality. There were 2 doors in the far wall. Near the dais, in a niche, was a small vase with a single spray of cherry blossom that gave the room a sweet fragrance. Sunad made no indication that she had noticed the door closing behind her or the 20 samurai kneeling in front of the dais. Instead, she focused on the impressive-looking governor, feeling slightly relieved to see his genial smile and the long hair he had always been so fond of. Sunad Dono, it is so good to see you. The man said, quickly leaving the security of his samurai moving as if to embrace her, then thought better of it, motioning for her to join him outside out on his private balcony. Sunad graced him with a beautiful smile, walking beside the shorter man. Yuo Dono, you're looking quite well. Ah, how kind of you to say, even if I doubt it's the truth. The man grinned at her, so the trip was well. Of course, Sunad chuckled, it's not like we have roaming enemy ninja in the countryside anymore. True, Yuo said, stepping up to lean against the balcony railing. So, what brings so important medics such as yourself to see a lowly governor like me? Maybe I wanted to act on a crush, Sunad said, prompting his laughter, and she easily joined in before walking over to stand next to him. Seriously though, I've returned to Konoha and I have the chance to improve the village health care system. Ah, so that's it. Yuo said, glancing at her. What exactly do you need from me? Certain medical herbs that we don't grow in Konoha, Sunad explained. Adraval, ambrosia, bacta, isoprovolone and metazine mostly. Also, any medical texts or experts would be appreciated. Those are some very rare, very expensive herbs, Yuo said thoughtfully with a slight scowl. I'm not even sure the growers would agree to let Konoha have access to them. With the Yamanaka and Nara families, you could easily start growing your own and outproduce them. We can agree not to grow them, Sunad said with a snort of annoyance, but I want those herbs. I'd prefer to not have to ask my team to get them. Team? You came with a team? Yuo asked, startled. They're guarding the money I need for my personal business, Sunad explained, then seeing his smirk she continued in annoyance, but they're still very talented. I'm sure even with those High no Kuni ninja you have running around. Wait, there are High no Kuni ninja in my city? Yuo asked, his tone growing dangerous. I told Fua-san I didn't want them in my city. Quote. Fua. He recently took over Region 7. He's been pushing for High no Kuni ninja to be actively used by the other governors. The most notable convert is Governor Genji of Region 1. Yuo explained sourly. His argument is that since Konoha is in turmoil, that it would be best to use ninja whose loyalty is no longer doubted. Quote. Tsunade said sourly, what little attachment she had to Konoha, feeling hurt at the distrust. I think he's just trying to use this to put Hai no Kuni ninja into position for leverage, Yuo explained, shaking his head. Fua is an ambitious man and I'm sure he'd love to take over as daimyo of Hai no Kuni. Have you told the daimyo of your thoughts? No, Yuo said, shaking his head. Governor Ito's under mysterious circumstances after all, making room for Fua to take over. I see, Tsunade said in understanding. I'll tell the Hokage then. He can reach the daimyo without worrying about his life. Thank you, the governor said, smiling. As for your medicinal herbs and contacts, I think I know how to arrange things. Good, Tsunade said, nodding slightly. I would hate letting you ogle my sea go to waste. My dear Tsunade-chan, ogling your sea can never be a waste. Watching Ino and Naruto talking, well, bicker more than anything, Shino trailed behind them, thinking about the uneasiness he felt. Why would the Hai no Kuni ninja that had been watching suddenly stop? It set Shino on edge, though Ino and Naruto seemed unconcerned. Shino, however, did not like what such a change could hold for them. Watching Naruto, reading his body language, Shino frowned behind the high collar of his jacket. Then there was the question of why Naruto was acting so cautious. It wasn't like him. Yes, Naruto was aware of surroundings and aware of danger, they all were. Still, there was something about the way he was acting that told Shino that Naruto knew more than he had bothered to tell them. Setting those questions aside for the moment, Shino briefly reached out to make contact with his Kikai that was currently on Tsunade. Things with the Sannin seemed fine, she was within the castle, and there was no hint of danger there. Then he felt a small surge of chakra and Shino turned his mind back to his immediate surroundings, thinking a genjutsu had been cast. However, after carefully reaching out with his Kikai, it proved false. Though he couldn't explain the surge of chakra, it didn't seem to belong to an attack. Cautiously turning his mind back to the two earlier considerations, Shino studied the river they were walking along. It almost seemed to glow under the setting sun, and Kekio added that it was beautiful. He agreed silently with her, and turned back to why Naruto seemed so cautious and the Hai no Kuni ninja. Oi, Shino, how much yo do you have? Naruto asked from up ahead, glancing over his shoulder. 20, Shino answered, silently spreading his Kikai out further to encompass the area. That question was a signal either Ino or Naruto could use to alert Shino that they felt something. Shino's answer confirmed that he had felt it too and that he would spread his family out further to check on the danger. So, have you ever been to this city before? Ino asked, focusing on Naruto, alerting him both with the word, that she had noticed something. The girl had stopped using it lately, but it still made a handy tell for them when they were being watched. Nope, Naruto answered, putting his free hand behind his head, 3 fingers held out, signaling that he felt at least 3 people. Shino remained silent, concentrating on the report his Kikai had discovered, then spoke. I have been curious, do you think our Jonin-sensei will be upset that the 3 us assumed this mission without her permission? Of course she won't, the Hokage assigned it, what can she say? Ino said dismissively, but confirming that they were all now aware of at least 3 Jonin around them. Oi, you guys ever been to another hidden village? Naruto asked causally, asking subtly that he wanted to know if either of them knew where these ninja were from. I went to Kusa once, it was really strange, ya know. Aha, really? I didn't know that, Ino said wide-eyed. I too, was unaware of that. Shino said, both having now confirmed that they did not know where the ninja were from. A second later they were spared further subterfuge, when 3 identical men appeared on each side of them. They were all dressed in elegant and simplistic white tops and pants, with black detailing. They each were also carrying black-bladed naginators. Ino-chan, take the ugly one, Naruto offered, glancing at the other 2. No, you take the ugly one. Ino shot back with a snort, drawing her Kodaki with a flourish. Fine, I'll take the ugly one, Naruto relented, drawing a kunai and tightening his grip on the briefcase. So, which one is the ugly one? If you are done with your routine, Shino said, throwing a pair of kunai embedding themselves in the ground in front of the closet ninja. A second later, the explosive tags flared and exploded, providing cover for the three Konoha ninja to scatter and engage their own enemies. Shino was immediately forced to dodge as the ninja he had attacked lunged forward, his Naginator spearing through the air where he had been. Twisting in the air, Shino landed adroitly and producing another pair of kunai backpedaled, defending against the flashing blade that was seeking his B. Shino of course knew that fighting a Naginator with kunai for any length of time was but all he wanted for the moment was for the man to focus on him while a small swarm of his Kikai moved to land on the ninja and drain his chakra. Sadly, the man seemed utterly unconcerned with such a tactic as he wasn't slowing down and seemed to be moving even faster. Dodging a particularly vicious Shino started forward then skidded to a halt, the Naginator already arching up and dropping down in a chopping motion. Shino brought his weapons up, the kunai crossing overhead to halt the descent. That proved sadly ineffective and Shino had to throw himself to the side, while taking a deep S in his jacket. Rolling to his feet and spinning around, a swarm of bugs flooded from his jacket to descend on the man. The mysterious ninja in response twirled his weapon, the rippling as bubbles of water encased the swarm heading for him. Funny thing about bugs, they don't do much when they're trapped in water. The man said, smiling politely at him. Shino prepared for another attack, when suddenly he took a water attack from behind. Pitching forward, his head crashed painfully into the ground and a second later, he was out cold. Ino charged forward, her Kodaki coming around in a precise arc aimed for the mysterious man's ribs. With a dull thud, however, the blade met tempered wood as the man blocked her swing. With a sharp exhale of breath, Ino pivoted, her momentum swinging her back around with a noticeable whistling sound. Her blade gleamed as it whipped up at the man's face, only to have it also blocked by the staff portion of the Naginator. The man shoved her weapon away and Ino went with the momentum, spinning around before coming to a stop in a ready stance, her Kodaki held parallel to the ground in front of her with both hands. For once young, you have a very good grasp of the basics, the man said politely, before spinning his weapon around overhead while slipping into an even deeper fighting stance, the blade snapping into position pointing at her. However, it will take more than the basics to defeat me. Ino hesitated for a moment, realizing he was being serious, and then darted forward. The blades clashed with a scraping noise as Kodaki clashed against the Naginator blade. They paused briefly, then Ino backpedaled slightly unnerved by the look in his eye, her Kodaki struggling to block his S. Skidding to a stop, Ino resettled her nerves and darted back in aiming for his stomach, only to have him spin his Naginator counterclockwise and pin her sword to the ground. A second later Ino released the weapon and fell back as the blade S through the space where her head had just resided. Rolling to her feet, Ino dodged backward to avoid a spearing motion from that weapon. Coming to a stop, she found herself breathing heavy, eyes wide, gulping. Kami, he was fast, faster than anything she had ever faced, and worse, he was actively trying to K her. No, this won't do, the man said, and with a flick of his Naginator tossed her the lost Kodaki, which Ino caught out of reflex. There, that's much better. Now let's try this again, shall we, dear? Gulping, Ino shifted her weight, deciding to use her most powerful techniques. Channeling as much chakra as she dared into her Kodaki, Ino dropped to a knee, driving the tip of the blade into the ground. Dance of the crashing dragon. The earth rumbled and then, with a loud crack, exploded upwards in a hail of rock. Ino, however, was already channeling even more chakra into her Kodaki and slipping it from the ground out at him. Dance of the midnight tornado. A moment later, a decent-sized tornado joined the earlier attack, obscuring her enemy even more. Ino wasn't taking any chances and moved to use her newest technique, Dance of the Setting Moon, which was B rank. Channeling chakra into her legs and to reinforce the blade, Ino jumped as high as she could while her sword quickly rose over her head. A moment later she came back down, the blade S down with unbelievable force for her size, attempting to S the man in half. Only instead of S the man or his weapon in half, her blade crashed against the staff of the Naginator as it was held overhead. Ino's feet hit the ground and then a second later the man shoved her way with his weapon. Skidding to a stop, Ino looked up to find the man holding his Naginator at an angle with the blade pointed causally behind him at the ground. I am impressed. To use the Sukiadori so well at such a young age speaks very well of your abilities. Thanks, Ino managed, breathing heavily, staring at his weapon before looking at him. Is that Naginator unbreakable? Oh my no, the man said, looking apologetic, much like your Tuskiadori technique. My weapon gains much of its impressive abilities from my chakra flowing through it. Gulping, Ino adjusted her grip on the kodaki, sweat trickling down the sides of her face, and then darted forward only to have the man block as before. Ino noticed too late that he was holding it at the far end, and with a quick twisting motion, he brought the blade from the closer edge of the blade to the farther edge. Then with a deft jerk of his naginator, the man wrenched the kodaki from her hand. Ino gulped nervously and stared up at the man, doubting that he would offer her another chance at defeating him. So this was how she would not that there was anything wrong with it. At least she had given her best, and obviously, this man was insanely more powerful and skilled than she was. I applaud your skill. Very few apprentices are skilled enough to hold up so well, the man said politely, offering her a pleasant smile, bringing his naginator up to rest across his shoulders. It also speaks highly of your sensei, Gecko-san, and Konoha in general. Thanks, Ino offered uncertainly, staring at him in confusion. However, as a ninja I am sure you appreciate that I must complete my mission, and as such I cannot have you interfering with my fight with the boy in orange. N.A., Ino started to shout, turning to give him a warning, only to be blindsided with the blunt end of his staff. I take my leave of you, my dear, though I look forward to seeing how you blossom, the man said, walking past her as she collapsed and blacked out. Fighting two enemies was not something Naruto had expected, especially one strong enough to force him to drop the briefcase and place a foot on it while molding chakra to hold it in place so that he could use both hands. Not that it was doing much good, he couldn't even get the time to form a cage bunch, and hell, he was too busy trying to defend against two naginators with nothing more than kunai. Growing frustrated, Naruto deflected an incoming naginator blade, while he hurled another kunai wrapped in an exploding note at the man on the left. What he needed then was a quick win, but the only quick win he could manage would need two hands. The kamikaze no jutsu was out for the sheer fact that he wasn't sure how strong it actually was, and with Shino obviously out of the fight he didn't want to risk his own teammate. Deflecting another lunge of a naginator aside, he aimed it this time toward the other man. The two clashed for a moment, and Naruto took the chance to drive both back with the last of his kunai and exploding notes. That would buy him enough time to form the Tora seal, which he did, filling the small area with a gust of wind that uprooted several trees. It also, much to his surprise, caused both men to explode into puddles of water. Okay, I was fighting water men? Naruto asked in surprise, staring at the two puddles of water. Talk about unexpected, but damn, those guys had been freaking strong. A second later, Naruto sensed an attack from behind and, realizing he had forgotten about the third man, spun. His eyes widened as he found a naginator plunging directly for his C. A wordless roar of surprise escaped Naruto as he brought his hands around and grasped the shaft of the naginator, holding it at bay even as the tip dug ever so slightly into his F. You caught it, the man said, eyes widening in surprise, his arms straining to push past, but he only succeeded in causing Naruto to slide backward, the briefcase firmly trapped beneath his foot. Hey, not bad, Naruto said, meeting his gaze, struggling to keep the blade from going any further. It seemed the battle had come to a temporary halt as the two of them strained against each other, but Naruto knew this was no just a pathetic bandit or even your typical Ronin. This was someone much more dangerous, much more someone that he most likely had very little chance against. You are quite talented, the man growled, his gray eyes narrowing. Do you have a name? Uzumaki Naruto, he grated out, wincing as the naginator tip slid just a fraction of an inch deeper into him. You. Yasushi Isaribi, formerly of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nanananshu, Isaribi said before suddenly yanking his naginator back, pulling Naruto off balance. The blonde pitched forward, then reeled upright as the other end of the weapon S into his mouth, followed by a whistling sound as the blade S diagonally across his C despite his desperate attempt to avoid it. Naruto's mind went dumb from the pain, then his legs were swept out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground, to watch in fascination as the naginator plunged for his C once more. Naruto reacted almost too late, the blade sank deeper than before, but Naruto had managed to catch the shaft of the weapon and held it tight, avoiding a certain death. You were very attached to your life, Isaribi said conversationally, increasing the pressure on his weapon, succeeding in sliding the blade just a bit further. Naruto managed, eyes nearly closed from the effort it was taking to keep the weapon from plunging into him completely. It will be my pleasure to kill you. I'm not, Yet. Naruto managed and then, like he had figured out against Sasuke, used his body as a medium for the K's no Yaiba. The wind actually seemed to howl in rage, the blades of wind enveloping both him and his target. For a moment, he locked eyes with Isaribi, and then the man pulled his weapon away and disappeared, leaving Naruto lying alone on the ground. He could taste B in his mouth, but he could also feel the unbearable heat that he had learned to associate with his body healing. Rolling over and getting up slowly, Naruto paused, watching as B oozed in slow motion from his C to pull on the ground beneath him. Get up. Gotta get up. Naruto raged, and with a surge of strength Naruto did just that, stumbling but remaining upright. Naruto took the moment to survey the area, finding it utterly devastated from his jutsu. There were deep sea all through the ground where he had been pinned. Damn, just how strong was that move? You impress me. To not only survive my assault but to drive me back speaks highly of you. Isaribi said from the left, and when Naruto turned he found the man, his white clothes shredded, splattered, standing on the surface of the river, holding only what remained of his Naginator underarm, tip pointed down. I have never seen such a jutsu. Tell me, Uzumaki Naruto, does it have a name? Kamikaze no Yaiba, Naruto answered, drawing his breath in a thick, wet gulp. A very worthy name, Isaribi intoned, and then spun his broken weapon around before holding it before him. Allow me to present my own technique, Suten, Bauski Doriru. It has proven undefeatable save for once against a technique known as the Rasengan. Naruto froze, eyes wide, watching as the man began his move. The tip of the Naginator spun around him gracefully, trailing through the surface of the river, bring up ever-growing trails of water. The weapon began to spin around faster, the trails of water growing in size, following the gleaming blade in the spinning dance. Instinct told Naruto that this technique, whatever it was called, was not something he needed to let the man complete. If the only move to defeat it was the Rasengan, then that was what he would use. Creating a cage bunshin, Naruto had it begin molding the chakra in the palm of his right hand, then once the sphere was completed, had it grasp his wrist and spin, hurling him at his enemy. Isaribi's eyes widened slightly, and then began twirling his weapon faster before suddenly the blade through the air. The swirling trails of water followed the merging into a massive spiraling ball as it hurtled toward him. Naruto roared in rage and brought his hand forward, clashing the Rasengan against the mass of water. His airborne advance halted, Naruto's feet hit the water and slid backward amid a rooster trail from the impact. A moment later, he braced against the water's surface and surged forward, digging the Rasengan deep into the blast of water, shattering it. The explosion sent him skidding backward along the water's surface once more with another rooster's trail, followed by a spray of water as it descended back to the river. Coming to a stop, Naruto struggled to remain standing, then collapsed to a knee. It wasn't until he saw the water darkening with his B that he realized that his attack had worsened the wound his body was trying to heal. Still, he lifted his head, meeting the silent and odd man he had been fighting, daring him silently to continue the assault. This fight is over, Isaribi intoned, staring at Naruto in dark consideration. You may keep the money. But know this, Uzumaki Naruto, we will fight again someday. Tsunade led the way through the maze of streets, before making their way parallel to a medium river where a small building sat, along with a dog and a waiting ferry. Adjusting the weight of the still unconscious boy she had slung over her shoulder, the Sannin was very aware of the Hai no Kuni samurai that were escorting them. Abasan, why are we going by ferry? Ino asked softly from beside her, eyes glancing around intently. Well, considering the fact that you three were assaulted by a mist ninja wielding a Naginator, I'd say it'd be faster than walking. Tsunade retorted sourly, more than a little disappointed in her niece's inability to do more in a fight. Though she was also disappointed with Shino's and even Naruto's stupidity over taking such blows. Right, Ino said scowling, so why are we going to a place he'd be at home attacking? Tsunade-sama, Ino is correct, the ninja used water-based attacks, Shino said quietly from beside her, carrying the new briefcase of money courtesy of the governor since Naruto had inadvertently destroyed the first one, he therefore is at home attacking from the water. Because it's the last thing he'd expect, now stay here and keep an eye on him. Tsunade answered, setting Naruto down before moving forward alone to the building to speak with the owner. Is the ferry ready to go? Yes, the man said, a quick glance over her shoulder and then back at her. The governor stressed the importance of being ready. Are all of you going? No, just 4 of us will be using it, Tsunade said sourly, me, 2 weaklings and 1 idiot. This ferry has a private area, right? I'll need to scan the idiot for poison. Of course, the man said, slightly indignant, the crew's already on board and waiting. The governor's covered the expense, so whenever you're ready just go. Great, Tsunade said, turning to glare at the 2 other ninja hovering near Naruto, you 2 get that runt on board. Then set yourselves up as lookouts on the front and rear of the boat, and this time try not to get blindsided. Ino's face flushed but Benton, with the help of Shino, pulled Naruto to his feet and dragged the limp body to the boat. Snorting in annoyance, Tsunade slung her furoshiki over her shoulder and followed him aboard. Nodding to the captain, she checked to find Shino already at the forefront of the ferry, then headed for the cabin only to find Ino standing in the doorway. Tsunade Abasan, well. Save it, Tsunade said sourly, glowering at the guilty-looking girl. I heard you and your team were good. Oh Shino, he's top-notch at thinking ahead, and there's Ino, one of our top Kunoichi genin, and Naruto. He's held off Orochimaru and saved the whole village single-handed. He's a hero. That's all true though, Ino protested. No, the only thing true is that Naruto is a hero, Tsunade said, her gaze darkening. He's a tragedy waiting to happen. Oba, will you stop calling me that? Tsunade snapped, her temper breaking and forcing the girl to shrink back. I couldn't possibly be related to someone as pathetic as you. Kami, you got your kicked by a group of Mizu Bunshin and let a friend, someone important to you, get seriously injured. Naruto-kun has the Tenkaichi though, Ino protested weakly, and he healed quickly, didn't he? He'll be fine. Girl, rapid healing has serious side effects, even a bloodline. Besides which, that weapon most likely was coated with a strong and high concentration of poison. Tsunade snorted, shaking her head in annoyance, pulling the girl out of her way. Now leave me alone so I can see if I can keep the hero from S just yet. But Ino started to protest, before Tsunade S the door behind her. Letting out a deep breath, the medic dropped her furoshiki in a corner of the dim interior. Crossing the cramped cabin, she sat down heavily on the small chair beside the cot, pausing as she noticed the forehead protector on the small table and a damp rag on Naruto's forehead. Obviously, an inept attempt by Ino at tending to an unconscious Naruto. Snorting, she removed it, before allowing her fingers brush through his bangs. He looked so much like Nawaki and the Yondaime. He also looked odd without that forehead protector. Gathering her wool, Tsunade removed his bee-stained jacket. At least it was dried bee, so her hands didn't shake that badly. Then when he was bare C, she frowned. Admittedly, she didn't know the exactly details concerning this Tenkaichi ability, but there should have been scars. According to Shino, the Naginator had struck Naruto repeatedly, and even healing abilities her Suzu Saisei included had to leave a faint sign. Instead, there was nothing, just smooth and unblemished skin. Well, enough about his F, it was the poison she needed to take care of. Flashing through a series of seals, her hand began to glow a greenish blue and she placed it on his body. Tsunade was expecting to find a system fighting a very high level of poison, but instead she found nothing. The medical jutsu she was using to check Naruto's body reported that he was perfectly healthy. That, of course, was impossible since nobody was perfectly healthy, especially a boy that had, by all accounts, taken several Naginator attacks to the sea, rapidly healed both wounds and poison. Even with an advanced bloodline that allowed for healing, like Ino claimed, there should have been mutations to his cellular structure. If her scan was accepted, this Tenkaichi healed him and left no mutation beyond. No, Tsunade decided, sitting back from the unconscious ninja on the cot, it didn't heal him. Regenerated would be a more accurate term. But it did more than merely regenerate perfectly, it made him stronger, harder to injure in that location. No advanced bloodline could do that, the human body simply didn't work that way. There was no explanation for it, the ability was just too unnatural to be an advanced bloodline. It was then a horrible thought flooded through her, made her eyes widen in horror and knowledge, made her heart beat and her breath stop at what the thought meant. Her wide brown eyes settled on the boy's peaceful face, mind shrieking the only explanation possible. Uzumaki Naruto, son of the Yondaime Hokage, did not have an advanced bloodline. An onijutsu. It was an onijutsu. Uzumaki Naruto, the boy who dreamed of being the next Hokage, was a Jinchuriki. The forest was quiet, still, in the gathering dark of the night. The only sound was that of heavy breathing as an elegant man, dressed in white clothes stained red, sat applying healing herbs to his wounds. He wasn't in too bad of shape, overall. Who would have believed a child dressed in orange could stand before him? Uzumaki Naruto was an odd one. He could use wind-based jutsu without hand seals, could apparently heal without thought, and he could use the Rasengan. Oh yes, Naruto was not a normal kid, and Yasashige Isaribi very much looked forward to K the boy in a true fight. No silly ambushes, no squabbling over money. Just him, Isaribi of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nanananshu, against Uzumaki Naruto of Konohagakure no Sato. Finishing his application of healing herbs, he took a deep breath, and then let it out before looking at the shattered shaft of his Naginator. Picking it up, he thumbed the worn wood, knowing that it had been about time he replaced the staff, but he felt bad. Still, with deft movements he removed the blade and tossed the shattered wood aside. Before anything, he had to find a fitting replacement. Climbing to his feet, the swordsman looked around the forest curiously. Mostly it was Kashi, which traditionally was selected for its strength, durability, and the fact that it compressed slightly at the point of impact to ensure it did not bend, crack, or splinter. Isaribi, however, preferred Sanuke, which had all the same properties as Kashi, but was slightly heavier and denser. He strolled silently among the trees and roots, looking for just right piece of wood until startled by a voice from a few feet behind him. Isaribi-sama, it is a pleasure to see one such as yourself. Turning quickly, prepared in case it was a mist hunter nin, he instead found someone dressed in the typical Konoha Anbu outfit. Except for the mask, it looked odd, a normal face with 6 simple marks over each eye. There was also a lack of emotions, a total blank spot, and Isaribi knew this was not the typical Black Ops ninja. Bonso Aru, the former mist ninja, said politely, watching for any sign of attack, I am afraid you have me at a disadvantage. You know who I am, but I cannot say the same of you. So sorry, my name is not important, the figure said, but you may call me Hiru. Very well, Hiru-san, Isaribi said politely, what exactly brings you out here so late at night? Better still, where are you from exactly? I am a member of an organization, I cannot say which, within Konoha. I am here, of course, to speak with the elegant monster of the mist and to make an offer that you may find beneficial. Isaribi kept his immediate reaction, to attack and then flee in the confusion, in check. After all, if this man was on the up and up, which he seemed to be, then this could be a good thing for him. With a subtle move that Hiru didn't miss, he motioned for the man to continue. I work for a group within Konoha that seeks to bring unity to the land. To do this we are willing to offer you an alliance if you will help us. Hiru paused, then seeing the lack of objection continued, we have many enemies opposed to our efforts, enemies that we may not be in a position to properly neutralize at the moment. So we ask humble that if you would lend us your strength, then when the time is right, in exchange we will repay your kindness in whatever manner you wish. So in other words, Isaribi said slowly, considering the offer carefully, if I remove these obstacles that you are unable to at the moment, you will repay me with whatever I ask for. Hi, is there something you would ask for? Yes, Isaribi said slowly, eyes almost glowing in anticipation, I wish to fight Uzumaki Naruto, alone in a proper fight. If you can grant me that, I will happily remove whatever obstacles you place before me. Quote. I believe an arrangement can be made. Hiru said, then reaching into the cloak he wore produced a scroll offering it to Isaribi, if you do not mind, this is the matter we need handled now. We are in delicate negotiations with a very important figure within Konoha and this could greatly help us. Taking the scroll, the former mist ninja read what was written inside, and then nodded looking up at Hiru. Let me repair my weapon and you'll have Deifu's head on a pike by the morning. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.